Hello, this is Dr. Martell, and this lecture will be on the Boolean connectives, also known as Boolean operators. Before getting into the details of the slideshow that accompanies the lecture, I do want to say a bit about this terminology that I'm employing, operator and connective, trying to explain what's going on there, or like what these terms mean, and why I use them in the way that I do. So there are some people in logic who use the terms operator and connective interchangeably. I don't. I prefer to think of the connectives as a subset of the operators, so that every connective is an operator, but not every operator is a connective. Okay. Operators include things like the quantifiers that we'll deal with much later in this course. And symbols like the negation symbol or the conjunction symbol or the disjunction symbol. Okay. The symbols that I just mentioned, right, the negation symbol and the conjunction symbol and the disjunction symbol, right, they're different from operators like the quantifiers, insofar as these symbols do a particular job that not all operators do. Whether we're talking about the negation symbol or the conjunction symbol or the disjunction symbol, in every case, these symbols link up with well-formed formulae of FOL to create a more complex, well-formed formula of FOL. Okay. They link up with others, other well-formed formulae, or you could also say, predictably, they connect to other well-formed formulae of FOL. Indeed, in most cases, they connect together to well-formed formulae of FOL. Okay. So, yeah. Negation symbol, the conjunction symbol, the disjunction symbol, all of those are operators. They were first studied by, at least like in depth, by a mathematician named Boole. So they can be called the Boolean operators. Okay? But they're operators that work in this particular way, right? Connecting. And so they're sometimes called the Boolean connectives as well. Different ways of talking about the same symbols. Let me then get into the slideshow. That screen. Okay. So the first thing that we need to go over is the difference between atomic sentences or atomic woofs and complex sentences or woofs. So atomic sentences are just basic woofs of FOL, out of which more complex woofs are constructed. They consist of a predicate of some arity, together with the appropriate number of individual constants or names, right? So unary predicate and one name like cube A, or binary predicate like identity and two names. That's like A identity symbol, B would be an example. A complex sentence or woof is it's going to be constructed out of basic woofs together with operators, either connectives or quantifiers. We're focused for now on the connectives. The connectives are said to be truth functional for reasons that I'll explain in a moment, actually very next slide. The Boolean operators are among the connectives that we're going to work with, and indeed they're the first ones that we're introduced to. And I take it that we're introduced to them first because they are in a sense the basic connectives. We're going to be introduced to and become familiar with using other connectives later, not too distant future. Those other connectives are handy to have around for purposes of translating English sentences into FOL, and they're handy to have around for like proof-making purposes. That said, they are not strictly speaking necessary. All the work that's done with those other connectives, it can in principle be done. Though it is tedious, it can in principle be done with the Boolean operators. So they're basic. They're sort of like primitive connectives, and I don't mean primitive in any pejorative sense. Just basic. All right. So why do we call these connectives truth functional? Okay. To say that they're truth functional is to say that there's a functional relationship involved. In particular, there's a functional relationship between the components that get connected, and the whole statement, the whole complex statement that results from the connection. Okay. In particular, there's a functional relationship between the truth values, T or F, of the components that get connected and the truth value of the whole statement that results from the connection. So there's a relationship here that is a functional relationship. Okay, so what is a functional relationship? Well, roughly, but hopefully precisely for our purposes, you've got a functional relationship if and only if. For every member of a set of inputs, there's a unique output. Okay. So, right. If you're talking about a truth functional connective, okay, for every assignment of truth values to the components that get connected, the resulting statement, it's going to take a unique truth value. Right? So either T or F for every possible assignment of truth values to its components. Okay. Or as I say here on the slide, bottom paragraph, take the set of possible truth values of the woofs connected as the inputs, and the set of possible truth values of the woof formed as a result of the connection as the set of outputs. Okay. The connective is truth functional insofar as for every assignment of truth values to the woofs connected, there's a unique truth value for the woof resulting from the connection. All right. So the next slide is going to illustrate this truth functional relation in tabular form. Okay, and when we do this, what we've got is called a truth table. So the next slide presents the first of these truth tables that you're going to encounter in this slideshow. As I say on that slide, the relationship between inputs and outputs can be represented in tabular form, with the set of all possible inputs on the left, or I should say to the left, and the unique outputs on the right. To illustrate, I've made up a truth functional connective of my own. I'm calling it Bullseye, okay, because that's what it looks like. The functional relation of inputs to outputs is shown by this table, with P and Q standing for any woofs whatsoever that might be connected by Bullseye. Okay, so let me just work through the table and explain what's going on here, how it shows that there's a truth functional relationship at work between the components of P Bullseye Q and P Bullseye Q. Okay, the components are P and Q, where each of them stands for any woof whatsoever. Okay. There are just 4 possibilities where the truth values of P and Q are concerned, right? They might both be true, they might both be false. The first might be true and the second false. The first might be false and the second true. Okay, so I've got those 4 possibilities listed in rows under P and Q. So if you look at those columns for P and Q, beneath P and Q, you've got 4 rows listing exhaustively listing the possibilities where inputs are concerned. TT, TF, FT, FF, right? That's it. Okay. Now look at the column under P bullseye Q. Right? For every possible assignment of truth values to the component expressions, I've just gone ahead and decided to give P bullseye Q a unique output. When the components are both true, I just decided, yeah, F. When the first is true and the second is false, T. When the first is false and the second is true, F. And when both the components are of F, it gets an F too. Okay, and this is just a matter of definition, right? I mean, we can define things however we like. This is how I've chosen to define the truth functional connective bullseye. Again, just for purposes of illustration. This is not a truth functional connective that we're going to be dealing with later in the course, and indeed, I will probably stop talking about it almost completely after I move on from this slide, which I'm now going to go ahead and do. So that's a truth functional relationship. Okay, I've just illustrated. Boolean connectives, right? They are each of them an example of a truth functional connective. So called because, right? When you use them to connect woofs to form a complex woof, the resulting woof, right? Its truth value is functionally related to the truth values of its components. So the first Boolean connective that we need to familiarize ourselves with is called the negation symbol. And when you use this symbol to construct a complex woof, the resulting complex woof is called a negation. So the symbol, for the most part, I'm going to call it the negation symbol. The complex woof that it's used to generate, that's a negation. Note too, there may be times when you hear me slip, and instead of calling this the negation symbol, I'll call it tilde. That's because there are a number of different dialects of FOL. And another dialect that I'm very familiar with has, instead of our symbol, which kind of looks like a minus sign, with a little vertical line descending from the right end, instead of that, there's actually like kind of a squiggly thing that looks like well, to me at this point, it looks like a tilde. That's anyway what it's called. A few things to note here. First, the truth functional relation can and is represented in tabular form. Okay. So what the table shows you is that when the component takes T, negation symbol P, when P, whatever it is, right, whatever woof it is, takes T, negation symbol P takes F. Okay, so when the input is T, the output is F. When the input is F, the output is T. Okay. There are only two possible assignments of truth values to the component in this case, right? For each of them, the expression that results from the connection, that gets a unique truth value. So there is a truth functional relationship here. Okay. Some additional things to note. The negation symbol is said to be a connective, even though it only connects to one other well-formed formula. Okay. So the word connective here is perhaps a little bit misleading. Right? Or ordinarily, when we think of something as a connective, we think of it as like joining at least two things together. That's not what goes on with the negation symbol, right? The negation symbol, it joins up with just one other thing, right? Like some other well-formed formula. It doesn't join together two other things. Okay. All the other connectives that we'll be dealing with in this course, they do that. They join together exactly two other things. So the negation symbol is kind of it's the exception here. There'll be some other things to note about negations in connection with parentheses, but I'm going to hold off on explaining what's going on there until later in the lecture. So the next Boolean connective is the connective that is used to generate a conjunction. And this too goes by various names, right? It looks like an inverted V. I will hopefully consistently call it the conjunction symbol. It kind of looks like an A-frame to me too, so I might occasionally call it that. Okay. Again, I've got a table here representing the truth functional connection between the components of a conjunction and the whole conjunction itself. Okay. There turn out to be 4 possible assignments of truth values to the components of a conjunction. The components are called conjuncts. So there are 4 possible assignments of truth values to the conjuncts. Okay, and I have them listed in the usual way, in rows underneath columns for the components. P and Q again stand for any woofs whatsoever. Right? There are 4 possible assignments of truth values to P and Q, any woofs whatsoever. They're both true. First is true and the second is false. First is false, second is true, and they're both false. Okay. The expression that the conjunction symbol generates, it takes a unique truth value for every one of those possible assignments of truth values to the components. When the components are both true, it's true, and it's false at any under any other conditions. Under any other conditions. Okay. Then go on to disjunction. So a disjunction is a complex statement that's generated by the disjunction symbol, which I will also actually probably more frequently call wedge. Okay. The meaning of that symbol can again be expressed by way of a truth table, which I have on the slide for disjunction. Okay. Again, to the left of that table, I've got all the possible assignments of truth values to the components of the disjunction P, wedge, Q. Those components, they're sometimes called disjuncts. So I've got to the left of the table all possible assignments of truth values to the disjuncts of P, wedge, Q. There are only 4 combinations that are possible. Either both the disjuncts are true, or the first is true and the second is false, or the first is false and the second is true, or they're both false. Okay. In every case, right, for every member of this set, P, wedge, Q takes a unique truth value. When the disjuncts are both true, it's true. When one or the other is true, it's true. It's only false when both the disjuncts are false. Okay. Important note here, the disjunction symbol is ordinarily going to be used to translate English expressions involving either the words either or just the word or. Okay, so when you encounter or either or in English, right, and you need to translate it into FOL, you should be immediately thinking of using like the wedge symbol. That said, you do have to be a little bit careful in translating from English to FOL using the wedge symbol, because the wedge symbol is used to generate what are called inclusive disjunctions as opposed to exclusive disjunctions. So an exclusive disjunction is a disjunction that tells you one or the other, but not both. And occasionally, like, people will state exclusive disjunctions in English. So when a server at a restaurant, for instance, tells you that with your meal, you can either have fries or you can have a salad. What they're stating here is an exclusive disjunction, because what they're telling you is that you can have the fries or you can have the salad, but you cannot have both. All right. Wedge is used to form an inclusive disjunction. Okay, insofar as a statement generated by using wedge, it's going to be true when one or the other disjunct is true, and when both disjuncts are true. Okay, so it's said to be inclusive because it allows for that possibility too. Perhaps an example in English would be someone telling you, either Steve is at home or Steve is working. That's the way Steve is. He's either at home or he's working. Okay. So suppose you found out that Steve was working from home. Surely you would not bring this up as an objection to the assertion, right? That either he's at home or working, right? You'd most likely be charitable, and you would assume that the person who told you this, either Steve's at home or he's working, that they meant to be expressing an inclusive disjunction, right? They meant to, in other words, allow for the possibility that Steve was both working and at home at the same time. So this brings me to parentheses. The version of FOL to which we're being introduced by our authors, by way of this book, Language Proof and Logic, it is actually quite elegant compared to other versions, but it is not the most elegant, if only because it, unlike the Polish version, to be discussed in passing later, requires the use of parentheses. So we have to have parentheses in this version of FOL. They're required to eliminate ambiguity. Without parentheses, we would not know whether the following is a disjunction or a conjunction. And I have here in the slide, the parentheses slide, P, conjunction symbol Q, wedge R. Okay. If you were to try and say that in English, there's actually two different things that you might well say. You might say either both P and Q or R. Let me say that again. Either both P and Q or R. That's a disjunction. Or you could also well say both P and either Q or R. Okay, that would be a conjunction. Okay, where the first conjunct is P, and the second conjunct is actually a disjunction, Q or R. All right. With parentheses, this ambiguity is eliminated. Okay? Since the parentheses allow us to see what the operators are operating on, or better, because we're dealing with the Boolean operators, what the connectives are connecting. Okay? So here's one way of using parentheses to disambiguate that expression I was just talking about. So where before we had P, conjunction symbol Q, wedge, R, now I have P, conjunction symbol, open parenthesis Q, wedge R, close parenthesis. Okay, that's to be read, right, if you're translating it back into English, as both P and either Q or R. Okay, the parentheses disambiguate. They tell us specifically that this is a conjunction, where the conjuncts are, on the one hand, P, and on the other hand, the disjunction Q or R. Right. Note that woofs of FOL must be unambiguous. And so parentheses are often required to even so much as state a complex woof. That's important to keep in mind when doing translation exercises. So one of the things you're going to have to do as we introduce both connectives and quantifiers too is you're going to have to develop the ability to translate English expressions into FOL using these symbols. Okay. If your translation ends up being ambiguous, you almost certainly have done it wrong. Okay. You should not end up ever with a translation that can well be read as either a disjunction or a conjunction, for instance. Okay. It should be one or the other, not both. Right? Parentheses, they do that work for us of disambiguating. Okay, now something has to be said in connection with the negation symbol in particular. Right, were it not for the use of parentheses, use of the negation symbol would also be ambiguous. Okay, there will be cases where we could well read an expression involving the negation symbol in two or more ways. And we only want to read it in one way, right? We don't want there to be any ambiguity. Okay. That said, it turns out to be unnecessarily troublesome to always use parentheses to eliminate ambiguity where the negation symbol is concerned. Right? There are a lot of cases where we could get by without using parentheses if we adopt a certain convention. Okay, so this is, you can consider this like a parentheses saving convention. Save ourselves the work of using parentheses. So here's the convention. Unless parentheses indicate otherwise, okay, the negation symbol is assumed to operate on the expression to its immediate right. Okay. Thus, the expression negation symbol P wedge Q, it's taken to be a conjunction in which a negation symbol P is the first conjunct and Q is the second conjunct. Okay, that's sort of like the default setting for the negation symbol. Right? If you want to indicate something other than that, if you want to indicate that the negation symbol is operating on something other than what immediately appears to its right, that's when you need to use parentheses. Okay. So as I go on to explain, if we wanted to create a woof that is the negation of a conjunction, right, parentheses would be needed, as in negation symbol, open parenthesis P, conjunction symbol Q, close parenthesis. Okay. So again, the rule is this: unless parentheses indicate otherwise, that negation symbol, it's operating on the woof immediately to the right of it. Okay. Parentheses are only used when that is not the case. Okay. I then go on to have another slide where I show concretely why we need to eliminate ambiguity using parentheses. Right. The two statements that I was just talking about, they are actually true and false. They have different truth conditions. They're true under different conditions. And what this means is that they actually mean two different things. Okay, and then finally, I just want to say a few words about this other dialect of FOL that I made passing reference to earlier, and that's the so-called Polish dialect. So yeah, there are more elegant systems than the one that we're working with, such as the one created by the great Polish logician Jan Łukasiewicz, I think is how you pronounce his name. What we just said in our version of FOL, that can be said in Polish notation as follows. Okay, so where we have a negation symbol P, a conjunction symbol Q, the Polish dialect would have capital K, capital N, P, Q, right? Where P and Q, again, lowercase this time, stand for any whatsoever. And where we had negation symbol and then in parentheses, P wedge Q, in Polish that would be N, K, P, Q. Okay. In Polish notation, all the operators are prefix and operate either on the wolf that follows, in the case of N, or on the two wolves that follow, as in the case of K. No parentheses are needed to disambiguate. Another great advantage is that the type of statement you are dealing with can be seen at a glance, since the type is always indicated by the first symbol, which is a capital letter, to appear. Hence, KNPQ is a conjunction, and NKPQ is a negation. All that said, we will not be making much use of Polish notation in this course, since it is too different from the most widely used dialects of FOL, and we already have enough to do. It's a really dated example now, but I sometimes compare the relationship between the Polish dialect and the dialect that we're studying of FOL to the relationship between, I think it was Beta or Beta Max and VHS. This was an old, at this point, like antique video recording technology, and it turns out that when this technology first became widely available to consumers, there were two different formats, right? One of which was Betamax and the other one was VHS. And it was the case, I believe, that Beta was unquestionably superior, just far superior, right? But unfortunately, VHS, for various reasons, became quickly at first widely adopted. And so because VHS was so widely adopted at first, it then made sense for people producing video recordings to produce and distribute like only in that format. And so like Beta died out, even though it was the superior technology. Something similar can be said about the relationship between Polish notation and the dialect of FOL that you're being introduced to in this course. Polish notation, I think it's superior, but unfortunately, nobody uses it, and so we won't be talking about it very much in this course. And that is it for now.